Right. Hello, welcome to Cheyenne Forum. Today is May 6th. Um, Welcome to our studio. Hi, Tom, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Yeah, this is our dear friend Tom. Tom worked in FBI for 30 years and works as an assistant director of FBI for 5 years. And today we're gonna discuss two questions with Tom. First question is, we just got a news from New York that a New York judge maybe will put President Trump in jail. And this morning, he said that he doesn't want to do that, but it's very clear that 1,000 fine is not working. So going to forward this court to have considered the jail sentence. So what do you think about this? This is question one. The second question is about, I think 5 days ago, the Congress passed an action called Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. So there are so many people approve that, agree with that, and meanwhile, so many people don't agree with that. So I just wonder, what is that actually? And why now? And is that against Constitution? So these are the two questions of today. First, about Trump, about the
Well, I
new.
can't just say yes or no. You need an explanation.
All right. So how about
Okay.
New York thing? Are you surprised or he really wants to put Trump into the jail?
I think the judge foolishly painted himself into a corner because Trump is not going to stop talking. And the
Right.
talking that he's doing, I think, and most legal scholars that I trust and respect think the same thing, that he should not have that gag order. And the
Mhm,
way the gag order is in place is unconstitutional and unfair against Trump.
mhm,
Now, on the other hand, what's he going to do? Because if you look at what does it cost for network advertising per minute,
mhm,
and then to have that on the air at least every half hour minimum, and on every major network, and then
mhm,
all over the world,
mhm,
that's what Trump is getting. That
mhm,
1 or 2 minutes that he talks in front of the cameras going into the courtroom, and then 1 or 2 minutes at least coming out of the courtroom. So he's getting millions of dollars of free advertising that he
exactly.
would have to pay for. The campaign would have to pay for if he wasn't on trial. So
Mhm,
now, if the judge finds him $1,000, that's a pretty good bargain for the Trump campaign to have him have the attention of the world for a couple of minutes a day for free, or now $1,000, a $1,000 gag order fine or whatever, which will be thrown out later. It's unconstitutional. He's
mhm,
not threatening anybody. He's not threatening the jury or the witnesses or any of that. He's just responding to comments that everybody else is making
right.
about him and about the trial. So it's pretty clearly unconstitutional to have a gag order. But
Mhm,
by issuing the gag order, he's brought way more attention on every word Trump says, that
mhm,
everybody pays attention now to see, is this going to be the one where the judge finally puts him in jail or what? If the judge puts him in jail, you might as well just declare him president today, because the public is not going to stand for that,
mhm,
for this minor infractions that the judge is making up out of the blue. This,
mhm,
I'm gagging you. You can't speak anymore out loud. If you do, I'm going to fine you. The
mhm,
judge, like all of the judges in these prosecutions of Trump so far, and the attorney generals and in the state's attorney's offices, they have all been way out of line
mhm,
being so political.
mhm,
And it's all going to come back to haunt them, I think. And
mhm,
that's what's going to happen here. And again, this case ongoing against Trump could have been brought 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago. They
mhm.
waited to the last minute deliberately to interfere with the election
Right.
and interfere with Trump getting reelected to be president. And
Mhm,
it's backfiring because it's taking long. They're not going to have, they're making motions. The motions take the court's time to
mhm,
decide and rule on and announce and all of that. So all of this, and they're gambling. I think the Democrats are gambling that every one of these cases is bogus.
Mhm.
Every one of these cases, even if convicted by these biased juries with biased judges, biased prosecutors, and all of that,
Uh-huh.
that sometime later they'll all be thrown out on appeal. And they're
Mhm.
gambling that, well, he'll lose the election in the meantime, and then who cares later if the guilty verdicts are overturned or thrown out or go to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court rules against them. I think they've gambled too far too late.
Mhm.
And so far it's against them. It's hurting the Democrats, not so much Trump. Now, when you say, or when they say, this is taking Trump off the campaign trail,
Mhm.
okay, so he's not going and holding a rally somewhere where 30,000 people are in the grandstand cheering him on. He's
Mhm.
on network television with millions of viewers
Right. Right.
24 hours a day all
Mhm.
over the world, which is the
Which
helping the campaign the most. And I think that the rallies are great and they help him a lot,
Mhm.
but these judges are making it so easy for him to
Mhm.
win public sympathy, to win public attention for
Mhm.
free. And this kind of reminds me, you remember this was the accusation against the media, even CNN, during the 2016 election. They
Mhm.
said that during that time, 2016, when Trump was campaigning, they carried every word that he said and everything, giving him all of this free publicity that they
Mhm.
think helped him win in the long run. And they
Mhm.
blame CNN, among others, for being the most helpful. Now, I
Mhm.
can remember at the time,
Mhm.
I was a CNN contributor. So
Mhm.
I was on 2, 3, 4 days a week with Wolf Blitzer and the other anchors. And
Mhm.
I can remember, getting ready to go on. And in those days before Zoom,
Mhm.
had to drive into downtown Washington to go to the CNN studios, which
Mhm.
are a couple blocks from Union Station. So you
Mhm.
go in there. I'm scheduled to be on the air with Wolf Blitzer at a certain time. You
Mhm.
go in, you get your makeup. They have a whole team of makeup artists to get you all prepared to go in front of a camera. And I could remember time after time, just as I was scheduled to go on after the next commercial break,
Mhm.
being canceled because here comes Trump. The plane is going to land. So they don't put me on the air because they're showing the plane landing. The
Sure.
plane is taxiing. The
Uh-huh.
plane is going to park at the in front of the stands. And
Mhm.
then Trump might speak. So the last 30 minutes of Wolf Blitzer show or the other anchor shows were covering the plane driving around at the airport.
Are they
And
trying to help Trump at that time?
well, I don't know, they were trying to help their ratings because
Oh,
there was so much interest by the public in what Trump was doing and
sure.
watching his Trump Force One plane fly, move around the tarmac and the runways and all of that.
Mhm.
So later, after Trump gets elected, then everybody, all the liberals are blaming CNN for helping him get elected. They should have never given him all that free advertising and all of that. And I looked at that like, here I drive, hour and a half into downtown Washington, go into the studio, get all made up, all prepared, lined up to go in. You go into a side room where they plug in the microphones and everything that you need to be on the air. And in some cases, I made it as far as the chair or the stool in the studio with Wolf Blitzer,
Mhm.
only to be saying, well, sorry, Tom, we're going to have to cancel. Trump might say something. Trump may do. So I used to joke with the producers that, I go to all this trouble to come in and go on the air. And if Trump gets the hiccups, I'm canceled. That's going to be the end of it. And and that pretty well was many, many days where, and I just looked at it like, okay, that's showbiz. That's what happens. Now later, the last couple of years, and I left CNN in 2019, the last couple of years, by that time, they had gone to Skype and then later Zoom.
Mhm.
And to do the Skype, the only difference was that if I was going on with a New York anchor, then I could do it from home. I could do Zoom or Skype or whichever one. First Skype, and then later when they came up with Zoom, I did that. They sent me studio lighting and microphones, and equipment to do it from home. However, if the show anchor was in Washington, then they wanted me in Washington with him, unless there was some emergency. And and I couldn't make it that day in person. But otherwise, 99% of the time with Wolf Blitzer, the Situation Room is based in Washington, D.C. Then Wolf, I would go in to be on air with him in the same studio.
Mhm.
12 noon, you had a different show that was on that was also based in Washington, but most of the anchors were in New York. So with a New York anchor, it didn't matter because you're going to be on a small screen anyway, split screen. And with Zoom now, that's totally it's almost always going to be unnecessary to go in to do that, and it's just effective being on Zoom side by side, like you and I are right now.
Right, exactly.
So there's no need for me to fly to California to sit next to you, much as I would like that.
Which is really convenient.
But no need. With Zoom, it's just as effective. And you're seeing me in my own home, in my own Zoom studio or whatever.
So
And
sounds like Trump is always be their focus. Always.
he's a media expert.
Right. Right.
When he did the TV show The Apprentice, he
Mhm.
was the number one show on television
Right.
for what, 10 years, something like that. So he knows how to play the media, how to get the attention, how to bring it back on him, how to do things in a way that gets him all of this free publicity, free advertising, and free ability to get his message out. Now,
Just cannot believe,
they pardon
that
me.
I just cannot believe that the judge don't realize that it backfired to them. They
I think
really
that
don't.
they are so caught up in their ideology, their progressiveness or whatever woke ideology, whatever. They are so caught up in getting Trump that they've lost focus. It's Trump is playing them, not the other way around.
Right.
So the more they try to hurt Trump, the more it backfires. And Trump has, I think, played this perfectly. He's on his way into the courtroom, but what does he do first the other day? He stops and goes into a bodega, a minority store in New York, in downtown New York.
Right.
All these people are in there. He's nonstop publicity about that.
Right.
And the references by many of the reporters on all of the cable channels, much less the YouTube channels and other social media channels, that look at how smart Trump is. He's got that whole audience, many of them minorities,
Mhm.
in that place, unscripted,
Mhm.
they weren't hired on purpose. They just happened to be in there. He walks in, and you have, you know, young black ladies running up to hug him and be
Mhm.
on camera with him. Now, the only way Biden gets a hug like that is when he attacks them and sticks his nose in their hair. Then he gets, then he gets close to a woman, let's say, or a
Right.
young woman. Trump, if he wanted to keep them away from him, he'd have to fight them off with a stick,
Mhm.
because they want to be with him, they want to hug him, they want to smile at him, they want his attention. And you can tell when you watch those clips, absolutely sincere,
Mhm.
absolutely, on the part of the people in the restaurant or the coffee shop or whatever shop,
Right.
chicken place or whatever.
Mhm.
You can tell they weren't hired to come in there. They weren't hired off the street. We'll give you $100 to go in and hug Trump. No, that none of that. And so
No.
he gets time in the first place, and then he gets extras to help him with the production,
Mhm.
that come in to help him, to be part of it, to be near him. And then you have a day or two later, he stops and sees the firefighters and brings them pizzas and other stuff. And they love him. So you see all of these groups
Mhm.
that want to be near him. So if he's not holding a rally with all of the people in the stands and on national television or YouTube or other channels, um, he's still getting the attention. He's still getting the publicity. Only this time, he doesn't have to have his campaign people go to all of the expense and all of the trouble to put together a rally in the local city and make all the arrangements for the stadium and all of that. He just goes to court, stops for 5 minutes in front of the courtroom door, gets hours and hours of free publicity the rest of the day.
So
So
the
I think it just shows a combination of, actually, a double combination that I think is a winning combination for Trump. One is the stupidity of the judges running these cases, It's absolute. And the prosecutors, the Alvin Braggs and the other idiots that are running these cases, shows that, but it shows how smart. So if Trump can manipulate the media, if he can manipulate the storyline, if he can do all that, he's showing that it wasn't an accident what he did during his first term when he manipulated the leaders of the world, whether it was Kim Jong-un in North Korea or going to Israel or dealing with Putin or dealing with any of these people. He always was on top of his game with them. And then, he goes to the UN meeting and he criticizes the NATO countries. You're not paying your dues. The United States, we're paying for you. We're paying, our taxpayers are paying the money to support NATO, and you're not. And then they're saying, yeah, so what? Then he says, if you don't pay, we won't help you. We won't protect you. Oh, all of a sudden, the head of NATO is saying billions of dollars are pouring in to NATO because Trump said, we're not paying your way anymore. You got to pay your own way. You got to pay for your own defense. So he's always on top of the message of how he's going to come out, and then how the United States will come out during those negotiations, during those presentations that he does. And then, his promise of not starting another war during his presidency, he kept that promise.
Yes.
And Biden comes in and we've got wars, coming out of our ears. So basically he gets his message across, and usually the people running against him don't. And in this case, the Biden campaign, Biden himself, the other Democrats, the Secretary of State, you name it, they are not helping the Democratic cause. And they're looking at it, I think, many of them like, well, we gotta steal it. We've got to do something and drop boxes and count the votes for 3 weeks after the election and let the mail orders come in. Let's see how much we lose by, and that's how many votes we have to gain in the count to actually win in that state or district. So,
talking about the voting, like early voting or the mailing ballots, what do you think about that? Some audience asking the question that in 2024, this year, we're talking about 6 months from today. Is that 6 months from today? Not even 6 months from today. How about the election integrity? How about the early voting and the mailing ballot? What do you think about that? What should
what you see now is
do?
that when the Republican National Committee tried to evaluate what happened in these past two presidential elections in 2016 and in 2020, especially when they say he lost, was that you had Trump actually saying, in the committee saying, we want the same day voting. We don't want this early voting, mail in, drop box, all of that. And it hurt them. And then when they analyzed the election results afterward, a good example is Georgia. One of the most popular candidates in Georgia was Herschel Walker. He had been a football star at the University of Georgia, All-American. Everybody loved him, patriotic guy. Trump supported him enthusiastically, but Trump insisted, and the committee insisted on same-day voting, election day voting,
Right.
and IDs and other things to keep it clean, and then allow mail-in or early voting only for people that had a reason. Either they were sick or they were in the armed services overseas or some other legitimate excuse that they should have, help or whatever, get an extension in filing their voting. Now, I remember in those days, when I was working for the FBI, I was rarely in the country on election day. So I almost always, a couple of weeks early, submitted early voting because I might be in anywhere else in the world on election day. So I had the ability to do that and did it just like any other citizen could do. But what they discovered, and I mentioned Herschel Walker and how popular it was, that on election day, Democrats had already been voting for several weeks. And so when on election day, Herschel Walker, the supporters of him go to the polls, he's already losing by millions of votes. And they look at it like same day voting. How's he going to make up the difference? And he didn't. And the other candidates didn't. And
Right.
then the other factor is, and that's Georgia, where the weather, you might have thunderstorms or something. But if you look at other parts of the country, you might have blizzards. You might have the weather is going to be very unpredictable on a given day. So
Mhm.
if you had 2 or 3 weeks to do it, or if you're watching your weather on television and you see them predicting that a blizzard is coming in 3 days, you'd
Mhm.
better run in and vote now before
Right.
that happens. So you
Mhm.
don't have to leave your house on election day. And I
Mhm.
think that especially the Georgia, when they lost the Senate seats
Mhm.
in Georgia, particularly Herschel Walker among them, they realized that's been a mistake. And I think even Trump realized calling that you better do what the Democrats do. If all of the Democrats, 80 or 90% of them, are voting for 2, 3 weeks ahead of the election, then we better do that. The Republicans better do that, or the Trumps, that it needs to be more equalized.
Mhm.
And that's what they're promising. And that's why they made the change in management at
Mhm.
the RNC. So you don't have Ronna McDaniel anymore. Now you have the head of the Republican National Committee in North Carolina, and then Lara Trump as his assistant. And now you have them saying, no, get out and vote early if necessary, whatever, and get out. Now, here in Virginia, where I live, this week, they just started early voting. I think 30, 40 days ahead of the primary. And that's just the Virginia primary.
Mhm.
But again, it's still the primary. And it's still now where people here and the Republicans here are saying, you better go vote. You better do it right away. And the new motto is that get your votes in and don't look at the polls. Don't look at what they're saying is going to happen. Because
Mhm.
2016, a good example, the
Mhm.
polls said Hillary Clinton's going to win.
Mhm.
She's winning. And then they later discover the polls are very inaccurate because there was so much public criticism of Donald Trump's, mean and a tyrant and all of this. So when people got the phone call from the polling company, who are you
Mhm.
going to vote for? They would say anybody but Trump. And
Mhm.
so in that case, are you going to vote for Hillary? Oh yeah, yeah, I'll vote for Hillary. Well, of course, when they go in the voting booth, they vote for who they want behind
Mhm.
the closed curtain. But in
Mhm.
any event, in the polling, everybody that said they're going to vote for Hillary did not necessarily vote for Hillary. So
Mhm.
Trump goes from being 6 points down or something on election day to winning by a lot
Mhm.
compared to Hillary.
Mhm.
And I think that you're seeing the same thing since, because the Democrats, all of the criticism that they make of Trump, he's a dictator, he's racist, he's evil, all these things, he's incompetent, he's going to ruin the economy, he's going to raise all of these things that they say about him. When you get a phone call from somebody you don't know saying who you're going to vote for, you're not going to say Trump.
Mhm. Yeah,
You
right.
might not say Biden at this point, but you won't say Trump. And or you're going to vote RFK Jr. or someone else that might be a candidate. So I think that's why the polling is inaccurate. That's why it really takes the expertise of some of these political consultants who aren't biased to look at this and say, there's an undercurrent of support for Trump that they can't measure. That
Mhm.
you have millions of Americans, the so-called MAGA, people being criticized for being MAGA are now basically saying they're proud of being MAGA, and they're going to help Trump win
Mhm.
again.
That's very good. Very good. Um, very good train to see. I just realized, I just realized that the Democrats won't learn their lesson. They won't learn their lesson. It's a backfire to them very badly. Another case is Jack Smith. He just admitted that he lied to the court. So how serious that is? What do you think? It's ridiculous. So the whole case should be dismissed,
Yeah,
right?
when you look at the cases against Trump,
Mhm.
there's not one of them that's been fair. There's
Right.
not one of them where the prosecutors didn't cheat to some extent,
Mhm.
or the attorney generals that run for office, like Letitia James in New York, saying, I'm going to get Trump. That's basically her campaign promise. Not that I'm going to eliminate the horrendous crime in New York City, and make New York City become the greatest city in the world again. No, the campaign for her should have been make New York great again, like MAGA the campaign. And
Right.
instead, I'm going to get Trump. Didn't matter. He did anything. He didn't. I'm going to get him and we'll find something.
Mhm.
And what they've been finding, isn't even true, but they don't think it matters, because if you look at Judge Erdogan, the fraud case in New York, the banks that lent Trump money to build a building how many years ago
Right.
come in and testify it was a great deal. He did the same thing. It's up to us to do the analysis of the value of the properties. We looked at it. We thought the loans were fair. The collateral was fair. Nothing was stolen or cheated or anything. And yet you have her find or Erdogan find Trump guilty and find hundreds of millions of dollars for fraud, when you have the people that were involved in the transaction say there's no fraud.
There's no victim.
Right, no victim. And the
Mhm.
and the so-called victim, the various banks, are
Mhm.
saying not only were we not a victim in that case, but we made money. We will
Right.
be happy to do the next deal with the Trump organization for the next building or next project that they come up with. We're going to be right there because we made money in the first deal. There was no cheating.
Mhm. So in case like that, I'm just curious that if Trump has the right to sue the judge for the malpractice something, because it's so obvious they are against the law because there's no victim of the case where they fine him millions of dollars. Can he do that?
Well, that's a good question. And if he does, the average lawsuit like that, especially
Hmm.
financial cases, are very complicated. They
Hmm.
take a long time. So
Hmm.
yeah, Trump can file the lawsuit and 5 years from now be declared the winner. And
Hmm.
these idiot judges be declared, like Erdogan, the judge that found Trump guilty in the fraud case, so-called fraud case that wasn't actually a fraud.
Great.
He announced that Trump was guilty before the first day of the trial.
Great.
That's unheard of. That's ridiculous. Yet he
Hmm.
got away with it for now. They're all getting away with it for now. And
Hmm.
that's all they care about. They're interfering with the 24 election. That's all that matters.
Hmm.
And they're hoping that they throw enough mud at Trump with all these different trials, all these different charges that are bogus, all of this stuff that they're doing, that he'll lose and you can't get it back after you lose. Now, when
Hmm.
I was in the FBI, especially at the executive level, my
Hmm.
last 11 years, I was a senior executive service member. And, when we had our weekly conferences with the director, he would tell us plainly that now in election season, and that would start maybe 5, 6, 7 months before the actual date.
Hmm.
And he would say, people, especially if a candidate's losing, is going to file all kinds of negative accusations against their opponent.
Hmm.
And unless it's something so flagrant, we're not even opening the investigation now. We'll
Hmm.
postpone it till after the election, because if it comes to be public, the
Hmm.
FBI opened a case against my opponent for being a crook, for being corrupt.
Hmm.
And then later it turns out it was a lie, wasn't crooked, wasn't a corrupt politician, any of that. But
Hmm.
too late. They're not going to rehold the election. They're not going to declare that person not to be the winner. So the person that gets lied about and loses, he just loses.
Hmm.
Simple as that. So therefore, the admonition to all bureau executives and leaders of field offices and headquarters divisions are: we will be very cautious about opening a possible corruption case from one or the other candidate, unless this comes from possibly independent third party or something. But if it's one candidate making accusations against their opponent, we're going to be very, very circumspect about those kind of accusations, knowing that there's a tremendous incentive, especially for a candidate that's losing, to lie and
Hmm.
have their opponent lose because they lied and made false accusations against them. And
Hmm.
so, that's one of the things that you don't see now. Every one of these cases has been designed to interfere with the election. That would
Right.
have been, and you don't hear boo out of Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, or Christopher Wray, the Director of the FBI, or other officials in the government, much less Biden. They're
Right.
encouraging this. They're encouraging these lies. They're encouraging these unfair prosecutions to
Mhm.
go against Trump. Doesn't matter. Throw
Mhm.
everything you can at Trump, and hopefully that'll be one of these will be enough. And they're hoping with these indictments going back over the last couple of months, you're talking 91 separate charges
Right.
in New York, in Washington, in Fulton County, Georgia, in Miami. And
Mhm.
they're looking at this of what are the odds if we can just win one
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
say Trump's a convicted criminal. Don't vote for Trump. He's a convict. He's a criminal. He belongs to be in jail
Mhm.
because they won one stupid count out of 91.
Mhm.
And right now that may happen because they're looking at completely biased judges, completely biased juries,
Right.
and we'll see what happens. This case in New York with Erdogan, when the judge in the fraud case said, and he's the one that said that Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 million, was used as collateral a couple of years ago in one of the projects.
Mhm.
And you have almost every expert on real estate in Palm Beach, Florida, saying Mar-a-Lago is worth more than 100 million, maybe 200 million, maybe $500 million. That
Mhm.
it's incredible to say it's 18 million, and you had these pundits joking on TV, I want to buy it.
Mhm.
Where can I sign the contract to buy it for 18 million?
Mhm.
And so that's the kind of lies. And this judge ignores all experts in real estate, finds Trump guilty, except he
Mhm.
found Trump guilty before the case started. He
Mhm.
said he's guilty.
Mhm.
Now you have, the current Alvin Bragg case, and same type of thing. You have all of these accusations being made, and they're ridiculous.
Mhm.
Pretty much everybody looks at it and says it's ridiculous, but he kind of figures, well, he's got a New York jury, New York prosecutors, New York judges. He might get away with it and find Trump guilty on one of the counts that he has.
Mhm.
And then now it's just was revealed last week on the documents case
Mhm.
that Department of Justice and the FBI lied
Right.
about the search warrant
Mhm.
and I remember going on many cable channels at the time commenting when they showed the picture of FBI top secret file covers. Basically, you didn't see the actual inside documents, but they
Mhm.
showed them spread around on the floor
Mhm.
in one of the offices at Mar-a-Lago.
Mhm.
And, and I said at the time, everybody that knows Trump knows that he is a neat freak.
Right.
He wants everything exactly on the top of his desk, exactly, in the right piles.
Yeah. Right.
And he's a germaphobe. So you'll never see him sticking his face into a woman's hair and sniffing it like you see Biden. Trump won't go near that. And they said it's hard for Trump even to shake hands on the campaign trail because he is very cautious and worried about getting germs. And then, of course, COVID kicks in and all that. So here you have someone that has that reputation with all of his subordinates and friends that
Mhm.
he keeps everything exactly neat. And
Mhm.
then at the time, they show this pile of documents on the floor spread all around in a mess.
Mhm.
I said on the time on several cable channels that I was interviewed on, that's not true. I don't believe that that's the case. I would
Mhm.
like to see pictures of what that room looked like the day the FBI agents walked in
Right.
compared to what it looked like after they left that room and left all these documents.
Mhm.
Now it comes out last week, oh yeah, the FBI spread those documents around. That it was a set up photo to
Mhm.
make Trump look bad. And
Mhm.
yet, meantime, it went all over the media, all over the world, all of this time of look how dangerous Trump is. These are sensitive documents. It could help our enemies. It could help them, bomb us or attack us or show our vulnerabilities.
Mhm.
And that was the commentary that went out of how evil and how stupid and negligent can Trump be to throw his documents. So therefore, when it comes out that Biden has documents in a loose box in the garage next to his Corvette, Oh, that's not as bad as Trump throwing them all around on the
Mhm.
floor.
Mhm.
So, that's the kind of games that have been played unfairly against Trump and in the beginning, from the beginning of this. And
Mhm.
then the accusations that they make, which are astounding. He's going to be a dictator. Well, he was already president 4 years. Was he a dictator then? Did
Mhm.
he keep us out of wars like he promised? Yes. Did he help the economy like he promised? Yes. Were we the number one oil producer in the world? Yes. All of the promises that he kept during his campaign to be president, he kept them wherever was possible as president. Now they're saying the whole thing all over again. He's a dictator, racist, this and that. Like nobody's going to remember 4 years ago when he was president. Just forget all of that when he was president. He was just he was kidding. He wasn't really running the country, whatever they come up with, and
Mhm.
then say, but this time when he gets elected, you watch out. He's going to be a dictator and a racist and this and that. You know, you can
I
you
think
can count on it this time. Not last time. That's an accident that he was a good president. Then Biden, one of the biggest liars ever to hold public office, and they all,
Mhm.
exaggerate when occasionally, no matter what. But in any event, you know, if the Pope was in politics here in the United States, he'd have to say, Jesus really was resurrected on the second day. He didn't even wait till the third. They would come up with some exaggeration
Mhm.
of biblical teachings,
Mhm.
to help their cause. But in the case of Trump, they come up with these things and they're just blatantly untrue. Then you have Biden. Biden, I think last week, made a public comment that the criticism of the economy and Bidenomics is untrue because Trump inherited a great economy from President Obama and Vice President Biden. It was great. Are you kidding? Everybody knows it was not great, but they just tell you that lie because how many people, especially young people, they're not going to remember 8 years ago when Trump inherited the White House in 2017 from Obama. You
Mhm.
know, a lot of the young voters today were in grade school. You know, they didn't they didn't know what the economy was, the situation of the economy 2016 during the campaign, January 2017 when Trump takes the oath of office, much less how many even can remember 4 years ago. That used
Mhm.
to be for years the common slogan, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Well, anybody with half a brain or that was studying or looking at this stuff 4 years ago would know it's absurd to even try to compare it
Mhm.
because it was nothing like it is now.
So it looks like the Democrats just lost their mind. I think they realize that they cannot stop Trump. They can't. So they just doing whatever they can right now to trying to do something. It's like Mission Impossible, which is stop Trump. And it's backfired to them, every single one of them. So we'll see what's the result.
Right.
And talking about you mentioned Bible just a few seconds ago. So this is our next question of today. It's about the act like anti uh sent I always cannot pronounce that very clearly. Anti-Semitism
Oh, the hatred of Jews, anti-Semitism.
Awareness Act. What does that mean? What is that awareness means? And also
It's
people,
more typical word salad of the how the Democrats name their laws, the
right,
anti-inflation law, the anti-this law, anti-Semitism law, and all of that. And
essential of that. Of
well,
the
it's just another lie, basically. They
Mhm.
give it a fancy name, which they don't intend to
Mhm.
to honor or to really follow. That this law is going to try to reduce anti-Semitism in the
Mhm.
United States. It's just not. And what the Democrats have basically done is declare that Jewish people don't deserve respect or legal consideration or fairness. They don't deserve any of that. compared to blacks. Oh, blacks do. Oh, we can't discriminate against blacks, or we can't, Biden with we can't discriminate against LBGTQ plus minus whatever the things. So whether it's transgenderism or whether it's people that are lesbians or homosexual or any of that, you cannot say a bad word about any of them. You can't do anything. You can't keep men off of women's sports teams. You can't do any of the stuff that the law basically says you shouldn't do anyway. But doesn't say anything about criticizing Jewish people or being prejudiced against them. And what you're seeing right now on college campuses all across the country, not everyone, but many, is that they're basically saying Jews aren't important. They don't count. We don't care if they can go to class or not. We don't care if we cancel graduations at these schools. We don't care. So if you're Jewish and you've paid $90,000 to Columbia University for tuition, fees, books, other costs, close to $100,000, and now cancel class, go home and learn by Zoom. We're canceling class. We're canceling
Sure.
Graduations. We're canceling every function at the school so that the Hamas protesters win. They win by closing down the school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I just was watching the news this morning showing that in San Diego, at the university there,
Mm-hmm.
the Hamas protesters are breaking down the gates and moving the fences and getting ready for the fight with the police. They haven't quite, the police, I think, moved the fences back a little bit. And they're kind of a tug of war with each other right now. But it's early in the day, it's a long day and night ahead. And if the protesters there are already getting ready to shut down the university, and make it impossible for Jews to continue their education, then, that's the way it's going to be.
So some people just wonder, this act, this is a bill, it's not a law yet. It's just a pass from the Congress. So this act will give Jews the superpower that nobody can criticize them. Is that what they mean? The act mean?
I don't know what it only means what it's going to mean when they enforce it, which may mean nothing. I would like to see what they actually do with that law. What's Merrick Garland going to do? What's he going to authorize the FBI to do? Maybe nothing. So it may just sound good, and Biden can campaign that, to Jewish donors that, look, we passed this law and we're going to prevent discrimination against Jews and we're going to prevent mistreatment of Jews or any of these things, but then they don't. Then we don't know if they actually do. So
Okay. Okay. Or it's just for their saying.
yeah, just to say that they're doing something. Oh, this time we mean it. How long did it take Biden to come out in public and criticize the demonstrations at all of these campuses? 3 weeks? A month?
Right. It's a long time. So some people just wonder, is this kind of act against Constitution? Because criticize someone is the freedom of
Well,
speech.
they've made all these laws already about hate speech, which
Mhm.
technically, where does it say you can't hate people?
Right. Yeah,
Your
yeah.
constitutional right to hate people. It's not your right to attack them or
Mhm.
do something, physical or violent against them. That's
Mhm.
not a right. But
Mhm.
to say I hate them, okay,
Yeah, right.
because you could say I hate the Ku Klux Klan. They're
Mhm.
evil.
Mhm.
Well, that's hate speech.
Mhm.
So what they're saying is, well, you can hate this group, but not that group, and what you say. And the bottom line is, you're supposed to be able to express yourself as long as you're not inciting violence
Mhm.
against another person or another group. So if you're
Mhm.
not doing that, you can express your displeasure or even hatred of that group. And
Mhm.
you look in Europe right now, Ireland and Scotland, they're coming apart because of some of this hate speech
Mhm.
laws that they've passed that you're not allowed to criticize anybody. That's
Mhm.
hate speech. You can't say that.
Right, right.
So, and that's grounds for censorship. You can't, it kind of reminds me, you didn't grow up in the United States, but I can remember as a little kid watching the Three Stooges on
Mhm.
television. The
Mhm.
Three Stooges were very famous for being silly. It's a silly comedy act. It's in the 30s, really, but I'm watching reruns of it as a kid in the 50s. And in the Three Stooges, the leader of it, Moe, every now and then he'd look at Curly or Larry, the two like subordinate brothers of his, and slap them around. And Curly would say, "What's that for? I didn't do nothing." And Moe would say, "That's for what you were thinking." And
That's
that's how I look at this hate speech. Oh, we're gonna prevent you from doing all that. You're not allowed to think bad thoughts about other people.
mhm,
Well, this
that's
is America. You're allowed to think it. And if
mhm,
you're not provoking violence, you're allowed to say it.
mhm.
But especially on the left, they want to prohibit all that. No, no, no. You can only say what we allow you to say.
Right,
We'll
right.
tell you if it's okay. That's why during the early part of the Biden administration, all their attempts, first in Homeland Security, then later in DOJ, to set up like a censorship bureau. We're
Mhm,
going to fight, if you say something that's not true, we're going to have all of these decisions based on if it's not true, you can't say it or post it on social media or on the internet or anywhere else. And you look at that and say, wait a minute, that's your right to post that stuff. That's your right. Freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, all of the, and that's why those particular rights are guaranteed in the First Amendment. So
mhm.
in the 10 Bill of Rights, those were considered the most important.
Right,
Freedom of speech, freedom
right.
of assembly, freedom of the press, the
Mhm.
most important.
Right. So, well, let's see in the students demonstration right now. What is going on is we see some people that for the Palestinian people or for Hamas people, and some other students like University of Chicago. They actually just have some different opinion. They against these pro-Hamas kids, the students, and they are ask them that why don't you take off your mask? Why you wear your mask? Take off your mask if you really pro-Hamas. Why you need to hide who you are? So this is my question. Is that allowed to cover your identity when you go to protest?
I think probably yes.
Okay.
If you
So,
choose to wear a mask, and you can use the excuse, well, I'm afraid of COVID, I'm afraid of this or that. What many of them are afraid of is um, facial recognition
right.
that will later be used by companies, elite companies, to not hire these people if they did that. If they were found to be in these illegal demonstrations or committing violence or vandalism, which the technical name is criminal damage to property. And they talked about, the Columbia occupation of that one building, that
Mhm.
when they kicked them out and went in there, that the inside of it was ravaged, tremendous amount of damage to that. That's illegal. That's not free protest or nonviolent. It's
No.
violence to property. It's violence to property you might own or
Mhm.
have a part of. In this case, it's a university. But what if it was a house? What if it was your
Right.
house?
Right. Right.
So yeah, and I find it interesting. One of the people that I have the most respect for that's frequently on the media is Victor Davis Hanson
Hmm.
from the Hoover Institute at
Right.
Stanford University.
Right.
And he
Right.
was saying that, when he's in town during the time he's teaching, he has a farm in the Central Valley of California. But when he's in town, he has a small apartment that he uses when he's teaching class every day. And he says he walks from one end of the campus. He has to go right through this gauntlet of protesters to get to the where he teaches,
Mhm.
and they're yelling at him and threatening him and all of this. And because it's not only a sin to be Jewish but also white, so that's like the second worst thing you could possibly be to the protesters.
Right.
And he says he frequently, just to see if they know anything about what they're protesting, will ask them
Mhm.
the slogan "from the river to the sea." What does
Mhm.
that mean? Tell me
Mhm.
the name of the river and
Mhm.
tell me the name of the sea. And
Mhm.
most of the protesters he asked that question have no clue.
Mhm.
they're not smart enough to say, well, between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean is Israel, and at the edge of Israel, Gaza. No,
Mhm.
they don't even know that. So they just know that this is liable to be violent, and I want to be there because it's exciting. That's
Mhm.
where a lot of the protest and a lot of the spontaneity is on the part of people that think, wow, it's entertaining almost.
Mhm.
This is great. If this turns violent, I want to see that. I want to see people get beaten over the head or hurt in some way or anything. And then the news media is gonna be there covering it, and I'm gonna be part of it. I
Mhm.
might even be on the news media. So I better have a mask though, because I want to be able to make $100,000 a year after graduation with one of these companies. But in the meantime, and I don't want to get charged with a crime if they identify me, if the law enforcement can identify my face,
Mhm.
and then therefore I get charged, and all of the companies and government agencies that want to hire me know that I was charged, and
Right.
they might not hire me because of that.
Right.
So that's what the protests are about, is attention and crime, and it's being funded by outside groups.
Mhm.
Many groups now they're identifying
Mhm.
that are paying for this.
Right. So the collateral damage about these elite colleges are their reputation is going down a lot. So when I saw the news that half of the kids maybe they don't know what's their protest for,
No
just
idea.
that they don't know the river, they don't know the sea, yet they went to the protest. It made me feel so sad. These kids supposed to be the smartest kids in the country. So they are just doing this thing that they don't know, they don't even know what is that.
Yeah,
It
and you have many of these schools eliminating the SAT scores,
right,
eliminating comparing grades,
right,
eliminating entrance exams. So
right.
so in a way, they're encouraging ignorant people to sign up and
Mhm.
and give them $100,000 so they can go to school.
Right, right. For that, I know that Forbes have another name list of the 10 best public Ivy League and 10 best private Ivy League. So we're just saying goodbye to the traditional Ivy League, and we have some new Ivy League. I remember some of them are the Maryland, University of Maryland, University of Virginia, University of Wisconsin-Madison, Georgia Tech, and some other schools. It's just like we will have a huge change of our education field because their behavior, because so many things happen, and people see that the traditional Ivy League college are just not as good as before.
No, exactly. And it's a good question for parents to ask
Right,
of the universities. What is so good about going to Harvard or Yale or Princeton?
right,
Uh, many of the schools, maybe not in the main, the top Ivy League or elite, are still really, really good schools.
right,
And they
right.
can be state schools all over the country, are usually very good.
Right.
And, so to go to an elite school, so what? What's the advantage of it? What are you learning there? And
Right.
apparently, much of what you're learning isn't going to help you later in life, that
Mhm.
you might have had a more practical but very good education if you went to some of these other schools that are not part of the mainstream Ivy League.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Well, so the last question today, because we're talking about the Ivy League, talk about the colleges. Some parents said we like the kids to go to Ivy League, like Harvard, Yale, because this is a circle. So you go into that circle, then you have everything's done. It's great. What do you think about the circle, the Ivy League circle?
well, I just think it's, pay attention. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to spend $100,000 for your kid to go to a school and be indoctrinated with
Mhm.
and not know the difference between the river or the sea, or where they are, or what they mean, or what the issues are in Gaza or Israel or
Mhm.
anywhere else? So I think that, and I think from that sense, you see some people on TV and on news shows like Mike Rowe who are advocating go to a commercial, go to be a plumber, go
Mhm.
go to be an electrician,
Right.
because you'll make six figures, you'll
Mhm.
be in demand, it'll
Mhm.
be a rare
Right.
occupation these days.
Mhm.
You don't need to go to one of the Ivy League schools and major in some,
Mhm.
you know,
Good life.
especially when you see the list of majors that some of these people are taking. You don't
Mhm.
even want to criticize the major because it's homophobic or racist or whatever, to say the name of the curriculum.
Right.
So I
Mhm.
think that's the problem.
Mhm.
And then, for these parents, take a good look at who represents the university. Look at the president of these universities when they're being interviewed or
Mhm.
they're testifying on Congress, and you listen to them, and they sound like morons.
Mhm.
These guys are running, these women especially are running these universities.
Mhm.
And they're not even Americans in some cases. They haven't even, they've brought them in
Mhm.
and pay them exorbitant contracts to be head of the university, and
Mhm.
it's a waste. What have
Right.
they done to make that university better? And
Mhm.
what makes it better for your kid or
Right.
you personally to
Mhm.
borrow the money if you have to, but make sure that you go to Yale, Princeton, Harvard, one of these elite schools. What's the advantage of that in the long run?
Mhm. I agree with you for sure. Look at the president of the university. That speaks a lot.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. I really enjoyed talking with you because you're so honest. And this is what we really need of this year. Thank you so very much.
Well,
And we have lots of um, audience just say hi to you and then just express their appreciation to you. And
well, thank you all. Thank you for having me on. And then thank everybody for watching and sending in comments. I appreciate that.
thank you so much. And then our time is up. And thanks. I really appreciated your thoughts and then your honesty. Really, thank you.
Okay. Have a
Also,
great week.
you too. And we'll see you next week.
Yes. See you next week.
See you. Thank you.